Hi, I'm Melissa Greer. In this video, it's going to be just a basic homebuyer 101. Well, the first steps to take to buy a home, I think, are identify an agent that you have a rapport with, that is reputable in your area. They can connect you to a mortgage lender, or you may already have one. Those are the first two steps. Is you want to determine your price point and make sure you've got the right people helping you. The next important thing, I think, is you have to determine what you want. And a lot of times we group that in what we have to have. Like, what if a house doesn't have it, you don't want to see it. Because I always try and practice and where I listen to my clients. And if you tell me what you want, I'll show you what you want. I don't want to waste your time showing you things that you don't. Determine what you'd like to have, but maybe you don't need it, or you could alter it later. And then tell me what you don't want. If there's things that you've had experiences with before, or where you're living now is not working for you. Location is a good thing. Let us know as much as we can. I like to listen. I mean, I'll listen to anything someone wants to tell me about what they want, because I want to get a really good feel about you. Tell me what you like about your house you live in now. What makes you happy there? And that helps us do a home buying plan for you. We connect a home buyer initially with a mortgage person, and they give them a list of things they need: 2 years tax returns, W-2s, 1099s, anything financial that has their picture of what they can qualify for, if they have some credit cards or any outstanding obligations. All your information, the mortgage person's going to want you to upload that. That's what you do. So you want to have all that ready. When it's time to actually start looking at houses, and we set you up on a couple websites that work for us, I like to set you up on the one I use because we can communicate, and there are things that come up that I can set you up that the minute it hits the market, you get it. There's no delay, and I get a copy of it. So that way, if for some reason you're busy, I see it. And so we do that, and then of course, usually there's several things you want to see, and we set up a time where we can actually go out and look. I learn more about what a buyer wants when I'm with them looking at houses. That's the time where you really see what people love and what they don't love and how they react. With masks, it's a little bit different. We've had to regroup a little bit, but I ask a lot more questions. But it's very telling when you're actually walking through a house with someone. Sometimes you walk in the first house and you love it and it feels like home, and that's why I love doing this, is because it's a lot of intangibles. It's very emotional. Once you identify the property, and you'll know it. I have this thing I tell people all the time: if I call you tomorrow and tell you this house is sold, would you be just a little bit upset, or would you be devastated? And if you would just be a little bit upset, it's probably not your house. But if you'd be devastated, that speaks to us. Let's move on this if we can. It's a very challenging market right now. It's very competitive. So we do the best we can, and being a buyer right now in what we call a seller's market is challenging, but I've tried to learn all sorts of ways to be an expert at guiding you through that process. So when you find the right house, the next step would be we need to put an offer together. The first thing I do is, if I don't have the property myself, I call the agent that does. We try and find out in this market what does the current homeowner need as far as dates, what their preferences is. If we can structure an offer that is already looking good to a seller before they ever receive it, that's smart. So we try and do that. We run comparables to make sure that the value is where it needs to be. We get your loan pre-approval letter updated with the property address on it. We get you to write a couple of deposit checks that we send with the offer, and we advise you on how strong those need to be, depending on if there are other offers in. So that becomes the next thing. We usually get all that, go over it with you, especially if you've never bought a home or if our forms are new, and then we send it to an agent and present it. Some people like to write a letter and tell the sellers a little bit about them, and that's fine too. I think that anything you can do in a market that has no inventory is not going to hurt. So once your offer's been accepted and prior to closing, the first step is we begin your due diligence period. That is the time that we have to do any kind of inspection, any kind of exploration, anything we need to do to get your loan processed, appraisals, anything, because you have until that time to negotiate repairs, negotiate terms. Once we get through due diligence, all the deposit money that you've put down becomes non-refundable and comes back to you at the closing. And if something were to happen that we couldn't come to an agreement or you didn't feel comfortable, that's the only money you would lose. Otherwise, once you close, all the deposits come back to you. So we guide you through that process, inspections, appraisal. Once we get to your due diligence date, we check with the lender, make sure they're comfortable that we can proceed. The next step is when the property goes from due diligence to pending. On some of the websites, contingent means it's in due diligence. It's the same thing. Contingent's an old term that we don't do anymore. And it used to be that if we were in a buyer's market where the houses we were having trouble selling, the listings weren't selling so fast, then you could sometimes purchase something contingent on your house selling. But in this market, it's very hard to do that, and they even took the status away. So if you do that, it would be a special negotiation. But it can, sometimes people use the word contingent to be contingent on inspections and appraisals, and that's technically due diligence. So it's about the same thing. The only true contingency now is if you were buying something and your house was already under contract, and you could put a place in our contract that says contingent on the close. And it means your house is sold, but it has to close before you can buy this one. And that's in our contract, but there's no contingent status in North Carolina, but sometimes if you see it, it means it's in due diligence. So the inspection process has gotten more and more complicated over the years, but in my opinion, you can't do enough. We want to make sure before you purchase something that you know everything about that property. So a full house inspection is great. If it's out in the county, we want to do a well and septic inspection. We always do a radon inspection. It's not as prevalent in Greensboro, but it does exist, and that's a radioactive gas that you definitely don't want in your house if you can help it. And it's an easy fix if it does have it, but those are things we can do up front. If the house has an irrigation system and that's important to you, we get a person to inspect that. We recommend surveys so you can make sure your property's on your lot and that your fence is on your property, or if it's not, that we know what we need to do for that. Termite inspections, because we live in the South, so that's something that they're only good for 30 days, so that shows you how things can change. Those kind of things, we help you schedule them. We help you figure out who is a good list or resource of people to use, and that's what we do during the due diligence. So after due diligence, this is what closing looks like. We set up in closing with a local attorney who is reputable. I keep saying that word over and over again because we want to always surround ourselves with people who really care and do a good job. The bank that you chose gets all the documentation to the attorney. They do a final title search because they want to make sure that no one's put a claim on your new house. And then we go to closing, and that's the fun part. You sign all your documents. As soon as the attorney records the deed, which can happen within about an hour after that, you're allowed keys to your new house. So the minute it's yours, you get it. A lot of people want to move in early and because they feel like they're excited, but the North Carolina Bar Association does not allow us to turn over keys until a deed goes on record and it's actually yours. But that makes sense. But then you can go tear down walls, you can paint, you can have a party, you can do whatever you want. So the time frame would be, due diligence is usually 2 to 3 weeks. Closing could be anywhere from 4 weeks to 6, depending on whatever the situation is that works for all parties. Sometimes it even could be 8 weeks, but you can usually lock in on an interest rate for 60 days. That makes us a little bit more held to a timeline. But and that's how it works. And then that's the great thing, is it becomes your house. But you're not done with me, because I'll still be in touch. We like to be in access. If you need a plumber, electrician, if you need anything with your new home, always feel free. We're always available. Well, don't be afraid to buy a house. I would say that because this is how I make my living. But no, we make it so easy, and we make it with as little stress as possible. But it is the one thing that you can do in this area, that there are bigger cities where people could never afford to own their own property. And it is such a sense of pride and accomplishment. And it also sets the pace for everything you do in the future. It builds equity. Real estate has always been a really strong investment. So don't be afraid to do this. I started selling real estate at 22 years old, and I bought my first house very soon after that, and I've never looked back. And it's a great way. Sometimes people keep what they buy and move on to something else and rent it. So again, if you want, the one thing that's the surest investment, and we believe this as realtors, is the land and the property. And plus, on top of that, it's your home. And wouldn't it be great to own the place that you have all your memories and you have all your celebrations, or you go when you've had a bad day? It's yours. It becomes your haven. So don't be afraid. Let us help you get one. Thank you so much for watching this Homebuyer 101 video. Please subscribe. We're going to keep doing these, and would love if you ever have any topics that you want me to cover, don't hesitate to reach out to me on social media or through my email. Thanks again so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.